Welcome everyone. This is our 18th class for Rave Cartography. And so we're going to be looking at the right angle profiles. And this was, of course, that slide we showed, before that was just the roll gates and the profiling gates from the original keynotes of the Rave I Ching. And then what we were looking at in our last class was this brand new set of keynotes that were created that were more looking at it from an application standpoint, which is kind of, what our theme has been over and over and over. We sort of look at things as we start out in a more introspective, what's behind the formula in a very deep way. What is the purity of that formula in the theory or theoretical? And then when it goes out into the world, when it becomes externalized, how does that show up as behaviors? What does the action look like? What does the behavior look like? And it was really kind of I just know that for myself, which could be obviously very different for each of you, but when I really saw this table for the first time, and I really, as a generator, know thyself, really looked deeply at some of these things that were a part of my profile, I just really did exactly what it said. I tried to apply it to get to where I saw it in my own stories of my life, my own history. Where did this show up? And that helped me, I guess, if you're going to take anything in and feel like it's got some truth to it, you have to validate it somehow. Did any of you take any time to do that for yourself over the weekend? Take a look at this table. I mean, some of the one thing that I will say, I have 9 2s in my imprinting, my gate imprinting, and some of the Rave I Ching descriptions. I mean, if you want to really feel like you've got one of the worst designs on the planet, have a lot of 2s and read without knowing what it means. Read all of your gates, and I've got the pervert, and I've got corruption, and I've got, man, it could go on and on and on, and I'm thinking that's terrible. And of course I didn't understand that it's very discerning, it's very discriminating, but in a very narrowly focused, answering the call kind of way. And so when I looked at my perversion, when I can't remember what the gate was, but it was either, I think it's 58. I think it's 58. I was in classes with Ra, going through all this, different stuff at points, and he said, it may have even come through in one of my readings, and he said, no, it just means that you have this deep, focused energy on certain things that other people won't really get, why you're so, why you're so focused on it, putting all your energy into it. And I thought, well, yeah, that's kind of what I do with human design. At that time, there would be a lot of people who would say, why are you devoting most of your entire day, every day, pouring all your energy into, this very narrow scoped thing? And I thought, well, because I'm a pervert, I guess, because now I know what the word means. It means I'm very selective in where I put my energy. Anyway, just sort of a way to kind of laugh at the ways our mind interprets things when we read the word itself and try to figure it out from our own dictionary in our mind, rather than what it's really showing us within the nature of how energy works. So did anyone else do this? Did you look at these and get a better appreciation for the actual formulas? Not that you had to. I'm know many of you are now getting into a state of just barely trying to keep up with all of this. We've been going for a long time. And by the way, Welcome back, Patrick. I really appreciated your email, and I appreciated that you've not been, that you've really had a serious illness you had to deal with. And I'm so glad that you really did step back and sort of, take note and try to take care. And, all of those things are, we have to follow our own strategy and authority, and it'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. You can catch up. Just, I want every one of you who finally gets to the place where you are listening to this and you've missed several of the recordings and you're feeling like, oh my God, will I ever get there? Yes, you're almost there. If you've gotten here, just keep going. Keep going. So any comments or questions about these, just from a big picture standpoint or an application standpoint for profile, before we just start looking at each individual profile on its own? Any comments or questions? We don't do, kind of that workshop-y side of this. So, okay. Then we'll look at the right angle crosses. And remember, now that we can put all of the profiling lectures kind of together, that we're starting, when you enter in, let's say we're all entering into, this mandala wheel, coming from whatever star particula we came from. I'm really being kind of silly today. And as we enter into the mandala wheel, we enter into our incarnation cross personality sun, and we enter into really a part of a process of purpose and destiny that we're here to pretty much, experience and serve. And these crosses that we're, going to be looking at are where we begin the journey. The beginning of the journey for whatever hexagram begins with a 1-3. They started off. They're the very first profile in whatever the hexagram cross will end up expressing. And so what we know about things that are at the first line level is, and this is the personality level, this is the witness that's coming in to set the foundation from which this incarnation purpose, this whole movement, which will start at a right angle trajectory, move into a juxtaposition, change themes and way it's configured at the design level at a left angle. And this is where we started at the very, very beginning as the foundation. And so this is one that is designed at a first line level to be, somewhat not sticking out and, everybody comes up in a room and you're the center of attention. This is the one that sort of is in the movie of life. They've got a kind of a background role. You know how if you look in a scene and a shot, you've got the actors, they're playing out different roles. In fact, we've got Hollywood in town again in Monterey area, filming for a show that'll be showed next year called Big Little Lies. And so this would be Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon and all of those people, being the stars of the show, but there's extras, we call them extras. They're in the background, sort of doing what is necessary to really, have a nice foundation from which we see the scene, we see what's going on. If they're in a coffee shop, you've got the people who are sort of in the background. You don't notice them, but you would notice if they weren't there. And, they are not really bothered. The 1-3 is just mostly investigating things, trying to figure out what things are. They're the third line that comes in, though, to really bring a kind of dissonance, tension, you could say. It's not a harmony between a 1 and the 3. There's a dissonance there. A 1 is not going to be very comfortable that a 3 is going to be knocking things down when it's trying to build a foundation. that it's bumping into things, and it's things that it didn't expect to investigate. So there's this interesting, movement that begins from the very beginning. Here I am, world, I'm going to investigate all this. And then it's like, oh, but this isn't what I expected. Now what? I've got to really just keep investigating all these things that you're going to bump into. So it's a personality, very absorbed, very, it's introspective, really involved in this very deep experience of what they're here as a witness really taking in and looking into. And then their life is just this experiment, pure experiment of seeing everything that can happen and everything that could go wrong, and then what you can see and learn and grow through it, because they're bringing such a mutative quality along the way. And so there's that side, and when you compare the two, it's interesting to see what the two perspectives are, even though it's someone's life. We've called the 1-3 the student of life. Always see the separation at this level of looking at profiles. See it as a very separate imprint. They are very different, but the profile is brought together as a life, as a integrated life, because of strategy and authority, just like everything else. So you get your perfect, bringing together the energies of the 1-3 when you're actually just here to witness what the life and form will bring you. And so whenever you look at these words, these keynotes, these ways to profile and go deeper in an understanding of the character that you're playing in this role, the 1 is going to be insecure and point to fear. And fear is what will drive the need to continue to investigate. And so it's going to always be, on the investigative track, very self-involved, wanting facts. It does not want make-believe, doesn't want fantasy. It wants the facts. And then it's, basically seeking truth. Isn't that a nice way to start off? If you're going to come in on as the very beginning profile for an incarnation cross hexagram, then wouldn't you want to start off with the, filled with wonder of what you're going to discover on this journey of things you expected and things you didn't expect, but also seeking truth and needing proof, because you'll be very, very skeptical until you get it. And if this is where the research is done, that's a great place to start. They can feel like loners in that 1, and yet this 3rd line will bring the other. That trial and error, that mutation in terms of the things changing. They really must experiment with things experientially, not just read it. So those of you that are 1-3s, we have actually more 1-3s than any other profile in this class. And that says something. That says that it isn't just about what you're reading in a book or I'm saying in a class. It's you getting out there and saying, well, let's see if that's still true. I've had some students lately, and I believe they're 1-3s actually, who just something clicked. They're in the ABC class right now, and that particular group of students just got into sharing and doing every homework, and just they're really, really going deep in it. And I can see now, because there's so many of them are 1-3s, and they're not just taking my word for it or taking a book's word for it. In fact, one of them said she felt that for a while a little bit bamboozled. I had to even look up that word, bamboozled, by human design. She said it felt like it was, too good to be true. Well, where's the proof? And then some things just really clicked. that as we go through classes, I know for many of you, you're seeing that for yourself. There seems to be more, and there seems to be a lot of accuracy to the system. And so then she's really captivated now in what she continues to research, because it's not just what's being theoretically presented. It's the, you know, the proof in everyday life that she's starting to go, my gosh, this does represent my own experiences. I'm not being bamboozled in some way that's, you know, I've got to just take it and believe it and, you know, shut up and be quiet. And so there is this third line that it dives deep, deep, deep into the material plane. There's the potential with things that happen to want to look for blame. And that's only really if you're thinking that there is someone in charge to blame. You know, that's one of the things that eventually you come back to. Each and every one of you are going to have to come back to this whole idea. Is there any choice? You know, the no choice sort of dilemma. When you see the mechanics being so perfectly orchestrated, at times you wonder about that. You can't help but wonder about that. And in the end, if there's really no choice, we're really just involved in expressing our own true potential within it all, then there's also no blame. You just bump into things as a 1-3. Things bump into you. You know, you can have a feeling that at times you come together with others and there's this, there isn't this glue so much like a fourth line where there's this deep loyalty to taking in whatever you're being given. There's a kind of flavor of disloyalty. It's like, no, I don't have to stay true to that. I don't have to, you know, just be loyal to that. Let's, you know, I'm loyal to it if it works. I'm not loyal to it if it doesn't work. And at any moment, it could break down. And that's not also a judgment. They must be free to break with something. That's the way they can stay, you know, in the fluid, flexible, moving kind of energetic experience. Now through the discovery, they must reflect and see what they have learned. You know, what's the point of finding out what doesn't work if you don't take that as part of the discovery process to see and open the doorway for what could be mutated, what could work? There's always, when you look at pessimism, in the memory especially, it just remembers all the pessimism. Look at where the direction is, what the direction of the movement is despite pessimism. It's looking in the direction of things that will be able to be sustained. It doesn't matter how pessimistic you are, you still get up off the floor and go forward. Sustain the movement. You know, looking for those things and again, coming together with experiences, breaking apart, coming back together with them. It's got to stay very flexible. It's got to be adaptable. That's why this is such a big part of this, the adaption. In fact, Rock created adaption. It's actually not a word. Adaptation's a word. People thought that it was typos and people had made mistakes. No, he wrote adaption, even though it's closely related to a concept of adaptation. You have to adopt and change and move forward. So as a 1-3, if we were to do an example keynote, just pulling some of these together, you could say, as a 1-3, I can sense when there is weakness that must be rejected, and find myself studying things and pursuing others that can help me overcome my own insecurities so I can take care of myself. Over time, it allows me to discover directions that can sustain me over time and through my awareness and memory of what has gone wrong, be an authority who knows that without strength, there's anarchy. How did that feel, listening to those words? Those of you that are 1-3s, I had to put you on 2 slides. So here we have Iris. Iris is coming in on a right angle cross of the Sphinx. That obviously, whenever I look at the Sphinx, it's such an interesting trident. You think of the mythologies of the past, and Neptune with its fork, kind of standing there in all their glory, and with their pitchfork, and you look at the body graph, and there's the sacral life force moving right up the middle from the sacral. In this case, this happens to be a generator, going to the second gate, and then there's that, it's all so directionally in the now, and yet really integrated with the role of the now and the role of the magnetic monopole, holding everything together, but holding this illusion of separateness. And it is a person who, is here to offer, through their own life experience, an investigation into the nature of directional movement, creativity, roles and place within the totality, and to do so through its own experience of life that's very experiential, very much bumping into things, getting back up and discovering from it, getting into the place of moving and sustaining the direction, so that you are investigating every kind of directional movement that could align with where we are and where we should be. It's just kind of cool. And then isn't it beautiful that Nihar is actually on the right angle cross of the vessel of love? It's also very much oriented towards the G center. The two of them together make up the entire G center. And yet she's coming in with her foot in her cross, grounded in the 10th gate of behavior, the perfect behavior and love of self, very much centered in her case also with the sacral center in response. But you can have a right angle cross of the vessel of love and not be a generator. You can have all kinds of configurations, but these are the gates. And this is what you're discovering. This is what you're investigating. The role of self, love of self, and how it also involves and pulls together all the other kinds of loves. The loves of humanity, the investigating, what humanity is about within this totality, and our role as 9-centered beings. The 46, that is just your life in form, what works and doesn't work as you're alive in form, what is successful and not. And then we've got the 25, that is very much, again, pulling in the love of the universe, universal love, not just about a targeted love, but you could love all kinds of things. A rock, Ra used to describe, his guitar. I love my guitar as much as I love you. It's not personal. It's just, the experience of love. And then we have these others that are also in the class and also right angles. And so they're, Cecilia is the right angle cross of the unexpected. And if you guys have a mandala wheel, just as kind of a little practice here, can you tell me, just by looking at her gate, what quarter is Cecilia in? Let's just give you guys, we don't teach incarnation crosses and readings of incarnation crosses in class, but I want you to start taking a look at these placements within the wheel. What quarter is she in? Do you know, Cecilia? Where's the 28 on the mandala wheel? Which quarter? You guys can pull out a mandala wheel yourself and take a look if you want. Just want to make sure you can see where people are coming in. They're different because you'll see some similar crosses coming up in a few minutes. And I want to see if you can see if they're the same, because I made the mistake when I was taking my classes, when I saw people with right angle cross the laws, it's like, oh, we've got the same cross. Oh, no, you don't. You came in on a very different quarter. It's not duality. Not in my unless I made a mistake. Isn't it towards, it is duality? Let me take a look, make sure I didn't make a mistake, which obviously can happen. It is. Good for you. Yay. I love that. I had it down wrong in my notes. It is duality. Congratulations. You guys are stepping up. I really appreciate that. I had it down as civilization, but that was not true. And I don't know where and it was in pencil, so it came from someplace that I just wasn't really paying attention, I guess. So then we have Richard, and we've got the right angle cross of tension for Richard. Richard's the one on the middle that's, shows on the bottom. And so just curious what you see there for Richard. Which quarter would that be? Where's the 48? It happens to also be in duality. And so he's, for both Cecilia and for Richard, their purpose as they're, again, expressing, and actually the more and more you're aligning yourself to your true nature, your cross is not a goal. Your cross is not something you go do, and now I'm going to do, I'm going to now be and do my cross of the unexpected. What happens is your cross literally takes over you. And then you get to see what it is. I mean, that's really the way it kind of worked for me. Whatever I imagined cross the laws to be is not necessarily what I came to watch it become, because there's so much more to it than what I was imagining or thinking it needed to be. It expresses itself perfectly when you just really let it be your cross. My father had, Cecilia, my father had the right angle cross of the unexpected. And I used to think that his life, and maybe you've experienced your life, has a lot of things that are unexpected that can happen, especially as a 1-3, right? That fits that cross really well. Not everybody is a 1-3 on the cross of unexpected. But what I noticed about his life is that he was really living this mutative life. He actually was a 2-4. And we were the ones in his life, in his family. Here it's all about his influence, the calling, and, the hermit, and yet with the surrounded by friends and family. He was giving us an experience of the fact that he was going to have things happen in his life that we were all that was going to show us all things that could happen that are unexpected, that you have to really prepare for. You couldn't have prepared for them if you didn't know that, these kinds of things can happen. It's like he carved out the road for all of us now that follow to have to really come, really be able to be prepared for whatever. He lived longer than anybody else in any family that we could ever remember. Most of his family died young, and he lived for many, many, many years, well past. He was actually very correct, obviously. He did make it to his 86 years. And when you get old, your body really starts to break down. And you don't know what it's going to be like, when you don't have anyone in your family that you could have watched grow old. Be prepared for all those things that can happen. And it was such an interesting thing because he'd said that one of the last things, he said, when we were all talking one time and he was seeing himself age, he said, wow, I never expected it was going to be like that. And he really used those words. And I said, well, you're letting us all see what to expect. You're letting us all get prepared for the day that this can also be an unexpected thing for ourselves. Yeah. So just to kind of put on tape or on audio what Cecilia said, she said completely my jobs, for example, I just let them happen and I really learn from each moment. I can say that I have so many experiences that I can actually give an example for almost anything I'm talking about. And yet there's more to be had, right, Cecilia? You haven't even used up your whole capacity of everything unexpected that you'll gain even more experiences for. And none of us would have expected those. So you're giving us more and more of an investigative, it's like no stone unturned for Cecilia, right? We'll just keep turning those stones over for your whole life. And then again, all of these things, when we look at Lexham, the right angle cross of the four ways, we talked about a right angle cross of the four ways, the one that came in on the 33. This one is the 19. And so again, we could go back and ask, what quarter is the 19 in? I've got to flip over and find it. I didn't actually write it, so I'll have to look. Oh, there it is. Very last quarter of mutation. It's wrapping up the whole quarter of mutation in preparation for the entry of the 13, but it's got a long way to go. It's just starting out what's going to happen with the 19, what the needs are, the needs that follow the transformation. Kind of cool. Now, one of the things you see here as we now slip into the next movement of incarnation cross trajectories is we maintain our one, we keep the one, but we're going to now have a life and our form that brings the frequency of externalizing, not just experimenting, but externalizing the foundation of whatever we've been investigating before. There's an assumption that, working it all out and whether it's correct or not has been done. And now you just need to get it out there. This is the investigating opportunist, not the martyr, not the experimenter, but the opportunist. So now they're just waiting for the opportunity to externalize the foundation, and they need to. This is the fourth line, the line of friendship, befriending. Their life is about going out there and befriending people, bringing new people into their life. Not that that's their conscious experience or their even desire consciously. It's just their life is doing that. 1-4 children really need solid things so they have something to externalize. My mother was a 1-4, and her mother was, I don't know whether she was a manifester or a manifesting generator because I don't have accurate birth time for her, but I know that she really had an interest in people getting an education. She, reading, learning music, all kinds of things, having skills, very, very deep part of her. And my mother comes along, she's a projector, really able to pick up systems, learn things, and she had her playing the piano beautiful. I mean, she could play beautifully all her life. And yet she did this very privately. When we'd go off to school, she was writing the biographies of all of her family and herself and her life. She left behind books that she wouldn't let us show anybody. It was too personal, too private for her, even though it was a beautiful, beautiful stories, because she was really just doing this for herself. She just wanted to retain it. She didn't, she wanted everything she was learning to be something that she was investigating. She wanted to be very factual. She didn't want any stories to get exploited and turn into mistruths. She wanted to record it. That was her motivation. Not to be seen, but to have the facts real, and nobody could take away the facts. And it was just a motivation that, again, her creativity was her alone time when we were all at school and she'd write. It allowed her to be very introspective. And again, those opportunities were always coming to her through her network. She always had friends. She always had family. She was the glue to some degree in keeping the family together, and yet not as the center of attention, although we all kind of recognized in the end that she truly was, to some degree, that person. So you have that movement from the 3 to the 4, and that keeps the movement through the journey. And we don't have any examples of that, but then you've got the next one that comes up. We maintain that foundation of opportunity at the life level, at the body level, at the frequency of friendliness and network level, so that it's an externalizing. But now we're going to be externalizing what comes naturally, not through research, not through any kind of study or investigation. This is someone who really does like to spend time alone, but that's because they want to get outside of the framework of everybody that's, paying attention to them or, recognizing them. They like some time alone to be in their own little world, just, kind of leave me alone to do my own thing. And yet they all of these, that they have this split personality, if you consider the split between the personality and the design, and yet they also have the duality of what goes on with a second line and a fourth line, that meanness or kindness, the advance or withdrawal. And that is definitely, you're not one or the other, you are both. And being able to embrace the full extent of being both is to really also embrace who you are. So these are the two fours that they're not really that interested in studying and learning the details and foundation until they're called to a certain topic they're really interested in. But they can be very impressive, powerful people. They can also be very, like everything, annoying, offensive. And when I say that, I'm thinking of, when they take on a call, when they become the missionary, the crusader for whatever they're crusading against, they're really crusading. My father, I guess this happened a lot in World War II when they went away to war. The only break you would really get as a soldier is if you smoked cigarettes, and you could have a smoke break. And so more and more, in the military, when you're in these really stressful, intense circumstances, a lot of people developed a smoking habit while they were away at war. And my father, did. He smoked. I remember as a child he was smoking, and we would travel in cars, and now we know all about secondhand smoke. Well, he would smoke with all 3 kids in the back seat of the car, and obviously you smell smoke. You're taking in smoke. And it was just part of what we were all dealing with. We didn't know it was such a killer back then. But he he decided, I'm sure with the help of my mental projector mother, at some point he really had to do something about that. And I remember him going through a stage of quitting. It was very painful for all of us because he was not in a very good mood. But when he got through it, he became such a crusader for everybody quit smoking. He was kind of obnoxious about it. We'd go to a restaurant, and if someone was smoking, he would just make a big fuss about it, dramatic, like, this is just terrible, you shouldn't be smoking. And yet, again, he was a smoker for many, many, many years. So this kind of both sides of that, when they're called out and get on their crusade, it's like it can be a little bit obnoxious and offensive because they're one-tracked. Remember, the fourth line can be very, very one-tracked in what their mission in life is at times. But they can also be the abdicator. If you don't particularly, and let's talk about that maybe from elections. Let's say you're going to vote on a proposed new law. If it doesn't really affect you, or you don't really feel a connection or a call to that cause, then it's very likely you would abdicate, and you're really not, you don't want to be bothered. You may not even vote. It's one of the hardest things about a democracy is getting people out to vote. If it's not their crusade that they're trying to do, they don't care. We'll let someone else carry that load. Let the majority rule. I'll just go along with whatever, the rest of them want, until it's that one cause that matters to you. And then you're going to go out there canvassing and telling people and influencing people and looking for the opportunity to get your point across. So these kinds of things are both available there. They're both a part of it. When you look at the bonding strategy of a 2-4, it's got this shyness, boldness. Not about a person who's shy necessarily, or being shy sexually. It's that they have a genetic kind of boundary that has to be broken before they're going to be intimate. If you want to be the lover of someone that's a 2, you have to break down their barrier that they have naturally up as a hermit. But if you can't do that, you're not the right person for them. This is all there. They can be very confident or not confident. This is all part of the structure. So the, ideal lover for the 2-4 would be someone who's going to break down the barrier and become your friend first, and then, gain your ability to see, they're the confidant, and then, you can develop that lovely, more intimate relationship later. So that's what's going on in terms of the 2-4. Now the movement is going to maintain the 2. But first we're going to look at, I forgot we had so many 2-4s. So Harris and Rick, is Wendy here today? Not today. So can you validate some of those comments that I was sharing in terms of this? Once you get on a crusade of something, or once you've really been called to something, perhaps even with Nick's help, Harris, can you sort of see things in Harris's life that are very important to him? Look at what he's got. He's got the right angle cross of the vessel of love. One of the things you see here is that it's full of a love, but it's a different kind of love than the 10, We're in a different quarter now. Do you guys know what quarter the 25 is in? You can take a look. It's a very different quarter. It's initiation. Yeah. So the initiation of mind, and we start off with, you know, it really being quite a impersonal love. If you think of universal, it's impersonal. It's not, you know, targeted very, very specifically. It's, gosh, you know, the love of everything to some degree, but nothing. It's just this person who's, it's not necessarily the target of love, but a very loving person. Would you agree with that, Nick? And same with, yeah, I'm finding it interesting. We've got a sleeping phoenix too with Grace as a 2-4. So we just see these roles that these profiles will create. And yet they come in with a particular theme, and the theme, of course, is entering in as the hexagram, but grounded in other, you know, aspects of the quarters. You've got the right angle cross of explanation for Wendy. In fact, Wendy, I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, because I didn't notice it until last night when I was doing this, but my Chiron cross happens to be that exact same one, the cross of explanation, which, as you guys can see, I'm spending my day in and day out explaining things. It kind of took over my life. I'm changing minds and corrupting old patterns of values and laws based on, you know, things that don't serve, you know, in a healthy way anymore, certain old outdated laws. And you know, and it's really because there's this mutation that's a potential. All these things are your design kind of takes over. But she's a 2-4, obviously being called to really bring revolution, you know, through her open solar plexus. I'm sure at times that can be, it's so important that she has very, very correct people in her life. You know, that she surrounds herself with the people that can help her fulfill her purpose because they're correct people. And yet she's the one that can bring that. She brings it through her own response, one response after another, and her own intuitive connection to that. So we have the 2 and the 4, and, you know, 2 and 4s, you know, are those people that are they're going to be great nurturers. They can also be people that are depleters, you know, of other people's resources. And that's because of the nature also of the 4. You know, you and there's a balance. Rick says about the barriers, I'm that kind of person who makes everybody think that I'm their friend, but in fact, it's really hard to truly become my friend. I totally get that. I think there's a resonance, I know there's a resonance for all of us that have a 4 with what you're talking about, Rick. And that is because the aspired to, go back one, there's like this shyness, boldness, but you also, in terms of an emotional resonance with people, there is a need at times to withdraw, to kind of, well, you know, hold back, or to advance. That's the 2 for you. The 4, though, has a movement ultimately that says, you know, if I'm really in harmony and aspiring to be myself, that's one of the reasons I retreat, to get out of the projection field, to return to my own balance and harmony with the way I want to kind of view things. And so the direction for being able to do that is aloneness. There's nothing wrong with that. Because at times when it is time to be with others. You know that you don't want to be alone forever, just enough time for you to get over the fatigue. Does that make sense, Rick? And sometimes, just let you pay attention to this, see if that's true for you. Sometimes when you really, really, really need to be alone to go back to your own place of nourishment and harmony, you might be a little mean if people don't allow you to be doing that. So let's all fess up to our good sides and bad sides, because they are going to be there. You're not going to separate and pretend that you just have one side of the coin. You've got both. And as a 2, you can be very limited in perspective, very, bigoted in perspective at times because of your experiences, because of your narrow view, because of your, discerning, what you're going to really be involved with or not. Yeah. And you got to be careful about that, because you're also not just that, right? Because there is a deep kindness, generosity, ability and desire to, let's face it, the only opportunities that an opportunist is going to get is through their network. If you're burning every bridge to every network, you're limiting the opportunities that your life is there to give you. It becomes more narrow and more lonely. And these are the things that we see as part of the balance of life, and also how uniquely the movement through the progression of this incarnation cross hexagram is moving us away from, just studying all the time, to now just being out there and expressing it so that it's there to be seen by the other, a little more than the person who's hiding in a corner reading the book. The person reading the book, though, that's a 1-3, is actually going to bump into someone, so it's not like they can be hidden forever. It's going to bring the movement. But now as we go from the 2-4 and we switch what's underneath, we're now going to universalize. Boy, talk about a projection. And this is a harmonious combination. This person is living absolutely a projection. They've got the difference between a 2 and a 5, though, that's quite different. The 5th line unconscious is universalizing. So, when you look at this being the 2 is also part of the first foundational bigram. This is the one that's more about the externalizing of it. This is the nature of this. This is the one that, when you've got a 5th line life coming in, you've got the general, you've got the one that, all right, now we need the general, the little captain of the ship's not enough. We need the general. We need the savior. We need the one that comes in and heretically shakes things up so that it is going to be, a practical solution that gets the job done, no matter what the projection is. So the direction for a 2-5 is not aloneness. It's, I want to be attractive to everybody, because I'm not going to go get them. I'm the hermit that wants to be left alone to do my own thing. There's got to be something that's going to attract a much broader audience, so that we can take whatever the opportunities started to be in the 2-4, and now let's make them practical in a much broader level. Let's leave it also to the stranger. So when you look at, again, some of what they support humanity with, They can be the one that distributes everything that's needed in terms of application. Or if there's a shortage, not enough for everybody, they're going to know what to really hang on to that is going to bring other people to their door because they're attractive. It's like in a disaster, you see that the water is going to, basically be turned off. They've already gone to the store, bought a bunch of bottled water, and now they're going to be in the position that everybody who wants that water is going to be attracted to them. They don't necessarily know that they're putting themselves in that position. They just seem to be recognizing that deep within the unconscious side of their life is setting things up, so they're always attractive. They're always getting the opportunities that everyone gives them the first perception, the projection, that they're the right one. Now there's, again, on this kind of odd balance, because they're a hermit heretic. So different than a 2-4. The 2-4 gets a calling from the 4 because it's social, it's about people. But the 2-5 is deeply reclusive. The 5th line doesn't function well when it's present all the time. It's kind of what really makes this work is that we talk about the 5th line and timing. Stay behind the curtain. Let them imagine that you're the one, you're still the general, you're the savior. It just builds up that attraction more and more and more. And then you give them a little taste of it. You're called out for a moment, satisfy that calling for just a moment, and then run back in the house and let that attractiveness build and build and build. It just, again, the more the 5th line can keep a distance, the more you maintain the power and it continues to grow. You're not in the everyday, well, what do you do with the general every day? Your reputation as you're behind, in your hermit world continues to grow. People will keep thinking about you. They'll keep remembering all the things you've done. You'll maintain the attractiveness. The more you're just in everyday life and doing things in a very visual way all the time, the more that projection field becomes very familiar. It may or may not be practical for every circumstance, for every person. Then you start to lose some of the attractiveness. So it's practical, actually, for the 2-5 to want to be left alone to do their own thing. And also because if they come out, they're never going to get rid of all these people, right? It's very practical. If you want to be left alone to do your own thing, you don't want to be a constant, a source of attraction. So this 2-5 can really help get you past your own barriers to things. I mean, they're living a life that's practical. They're living a life that comes as a real natural. They can tell through their own resonance, when to withdraw, when to go advance. They can be very selfless. They can also be very selfish, and they have to be at times. They can be very disciplined. They can be very rebellious when that frequency is determining that. These are ways you can keynote it. This is the way you can play with it. So if we were to kind of take a look at some, again, differences, I'm going to go back a slide and just say, here we have the natural Democrat who seeks harmony with those he or she befriends and shyly confides in and feels nourished by, but also knowing when to withdraw, when to seek aloneness, when feeling fatigued by those who are becoming too dependent and not offering opportunities for them to benefit from. It tells you something about a 4. They are here being able to provide opportunities, but that needs to be a balance with their network. Their network also has to maintain their ability to give them opportunities. As we move to a 2-5, now we have all these different kinds of keynotes. The second line, the projection out, being called, wanting harmony, a very, natural type of energy. They have a knack. We call it sometimes a genetic gift. There's a spirituality to that, a wonder to that, a faith. Not necessarily wanting to study except when called to. And their life is contained within this kind of boundaries. And it's much more narrowly discerning and discriminating because of those boundaries. I don't know where it came from, but Ra used to laugh a lot about the 2s not wanting anybody to rearrange their personal space. I honestly don't know where he got that from. There must be people in his life that if you walked in and you kind of did something to their space, it's leave my stuff alone kind of stuff, you'd hear about it. But you've got on the 5th line side, the practical solutions. They're not thinking about these practical solutions. They're bringing, and their life is bringing out of them these practical solutions. It's part of their defense mechanism. If I can just give them what they want, they'll go away and leave me alone to do my own thing. Do you see how this movement can really reinforce a different kind of behavior than a 2-4? So it's the hermit answering the call from those seeing their natural gift, but also what the wanting is. The universalizing heretic is doing all of this through their attractiveness, and practical solutions. So now we'll just move this down the next trajectory to a 3. So we're maintaining the attractiveness on the life and body level, the unconscious level. The not realizing the impact it's going to have is universalizing, because we're back still in the lower trigram when it comes to the conscious side, the personality side, but we're closer now to more people than the 2. It's like, okay, I'm not just a hermit inside my home with the doors closed and the windows open, but you're not realizing people are out there. No, you're probably walking down the street out there discovering life, experiencing life, but you've got your head down and you're bumping into whoever happened to be in your path. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So this is going to not only bump into one person, but probably cause everybody around them to fall over, because there's a universalizing effect. The 3rd line bumping into what must be examined for a practical aspect that it'll bring. That's very different than the 3rd line we saw before in the body side when we were looking at a 1-3. We're bringing that mutative quality back into the picture of this movement. We're bringing in an opportunity for things to change and mutate. Things not to start out and be the way we thought they would be. And this is at the conscious level. So knowing whether bonds will lead to allegiance or rejection, being able to seduce the other into partnerships that are sustainable or not. And also attractive because they're offering a chance to be a rebel who can come and go when the need presents itself. Isn't it interesting to see that these words are what the keynote is? These words are what the formula is. And they can be applied in many ways, as keynoting can be. So the 5th line keynotes is universalization. They're being projected on. They're not putting it out, they're taking it in. So that has to take in all kinds of practical solutions. Very pragmatic. They're great for arbitration. Sort of what the promise, if you get to this place within the movement of the hexagram, you're promising and hoping for, something that's going to work, really work for society. And it might, and it might not, because you're just experimenting. You're just in the discovery mode. You're just, trying things that work and don't work without recognizing consciously the impact that can have on others. They're just, you've attracted them, and they're just coming right down there with you, for good or bad. So there's the reputation in the end that will come through. The seduction and the seducer and seducer and being seduced all comes with that. Being the one that conditions others and is also being conditioned by the projection of others. They can be the stranger in their own immediate community. Everybody can see what they think they are, which has nothing to do necessarily with what their life will bring. A real messenger to some degree. So they've got to, if we were to keynote it, they're bumping into what must be examined for the practical aspects it brings or not. Knowing whether bonds will lead to allegiance or rejection, being able to seduce others into partnership that's sustainable, attractive, and all of the things, we kind of brought out before. And so that's a more common profile. Remember, there was the changing profiles and there was the foundational profiles. This is more of a foundational profile. So you would expect to see more people. Seema with her, we have a lot of four ways and Sphinx and sleeping phoenixes. Sort of an interesting thing to see in this world as we're starting to move from the cross of planning into a cross of sleeping phoenix in the future as a background frequency, and we're bringing in all of this directional movement, creativity, but also the four ways. That is, someone who's going to and it's rooted in the quarter of gosh, I have to look. Joanna's got the 24. See, I don't memorize where all these are. She's in the initiation. So she's coming in with initiation to really to return, to have that rationalizing of everything that's come forward, and getting prepared for the mutation of transformation of mind. And going through chapters in her life, she's got, the four ways really is bringing out the four quarters, and their life reflects four quarters or more. I mean, they really, every 16, I think it was 16 years, they really can be in a whole different trip. It's just something that is interesting to watch those in that particular movement. And so the right angle cross of the Sphinx, Christina, the 3-5, has an opportunity to really experiment with directions. Look, she has totally open G. No, she doesn't. She can't with the Sphinx. I was looking at Joanna. It's not only, in fact, I think you only have one gate out of the G center that's not defined. But they're really deeply taking in directional movement, the one that can empower, as long as we're really aligned with the true nature of sacral response, experimentation. And she's just throwing herself into the experience of it with her configuration matches her purpose in a very interesting way that can lead to quite an externalizing. And she's already had an impact with helping people with their direction in the country she's in. Seema, you know, having a life that is a manifesting generator is really just got to live in the moment and express creativity as the frequencies of life are changing in a very individualized way. She's got so much individuality, bringing so much shock. I imagine she's gone through shock in her life, had to recognize where that's leading her in life, and also, you know, again, walk away. You know, anyone with a lot of individuality is going to experience this, but you know, people with channel mutation or sleeping phoenix, I mean, literally you die to a life before and really come out new, and I'm sure many different chapters. So you're starting to kind of get a feel for how you can also take the language and apply it, and then also step back and recognize that it's something that's there, as how you will fulfill behaviorally and even philosophically. You know, where you're coming from is a way you can see all of these profiling applications. This is where you're coming from within the role of your own very unique incarnation cross. It's a different way to fulfill it. Now, as you take that 5 and you move it into this harmonious changing profile, you don't see a lot of 3 6s. And remember that the 6 is very unique. The 6 is going to bring with it a 3-part life. It's not really like all the other 1 through 5 perspectives, you know, that fulfill a certain perspective within the hexagram and the movement, but within the hexagram. The 6 stands alone. The 6 is the ultimate expression of the entire movement of the hexagram, all 6 lines. And so to move through a life of a 6, you move through 3 bigrams: a foundational bigram in your life, the first 30 years, a transitional movement, a coming together of everything you learned in the first 30 years that you're really absorbing and then getting ready to externalize. And that would be sort of the second bigram, the adaptation from what you've learned in life. And then you emerge as the full expression of the 6. That's the last part of the life. So the first part for a 3-6 is a 3-3. That's why you don't meet a lot of them. They may not make it, you know, to becoming a 6. They may just, you know, kind of fly right out of here with a 3-3 life. And yet they're bumping into things that must be examined, and they are knowing whether bonds will lead to allegiance or rejection, looking into being able to be not really a rebel, but more of that creativity that's going to come, because you're looking for different ways to take things and make them sustainable. You know, the creative solution out of all of the things that didn't work. And you map that up with being also in a transition, because the 3 is a very transitional kind of line, a very mundane material line, and you move that into the possibility of that emerging as the ultimate optimism, because even though their limited perspective is pessimism, what keeps their life going is the fact that, but in the end, we can still hope. We can still see that there could be something good in all of this. They maintain a direction that's not about just sustainment, but also about objectivity. Remember, the 6th line starts to detach. The 6th line starts to become more removed, more aloof. There's more distance between where they started and where they end up. They've gone through so many different processes that help them mature. There's a wisdom. The ultimate nature of the role model is to be the administrator, to know how to really administer, from a place of modeling to others, all of the experiences, all the things that in the end you can trust or not trust. And if you can't trust, then you no longer care. There's no more sympathy. There's just apathy. All of this is part of the universalizing principle that's quite different than a 5, because the 5 really does still maintain its own perspective, and it's one of projection. That's why it's attractive, because people are projecting on it its attractiveness. This is pure experience that shifts everything you've learned into the ultimate objectivity. So you could say they're the role model who will not give up the search for perfected bonds that will last. If you've got bonds made and broken, what keeps them going is that, yeah, but you might find that soulmate. Soulmate is that perfected mate, the one that probably never will exist, but there's an optimism for it. The potential for it. It could still be there in the formula. So that optimism is recognizing you may have to deal with a lot of false starts and rejections before finding that partner that you can trust and is ready for your leadership. How does that sound to you, Jasper? Do you really get a feeling inside of you at this stage in your life how important, or what you're looking for is the ultimate person and things in life you can trust? That's the whole idea. Now, the joke is, if you really, really understand, there is only, ultimately the perfected mate is the perfected truth, which is, self-love to some degree. You are the perfect mate for your perfect life. Yeah, because that is such a pivotal time. You are shifting from what has just been a, 3 3 3 3 3 life to, hey, there was a reason that those were really important things that happened. And that optimism that it wasn't in vain that all happened. It was because that was perfect. That was the perfection of your life, because it's leading you to what not only you are now, which is in the reflective, aloof, detaching, up on the roof place, but it'll make even more sense when you come back down. But this is the time to truly embrace it. And that's good if you're in a soulmate relationship, because it's deepening your optimism that through all the other stuff, I found, if without the other stuff, I couldn't have found this. Does that make sense, Jasper? Because that's true. Because that's what you gain access to in the stage 2, is the objectivity. Well, I don't want that anymore, so I'm looking for this. That's really kind of how it all kind of flows. But there's still little imperfections. We have to all be honest, because we're not really, with any other person, there's acceptance, but that is really as close as you can get to the other and their own unique design. Everybody will have their own perspective. in the end. And as long as you accept that and it's a good one and you learn and grow from it, it's perfect. It's perfect. So you're really experimenting deeply this world of the Maya, the inner mysteries of life through the Maya, and all of the things you're bumping into. And this is, your destiny, your personalized movement in time and space, and we just happen to be riding along the same ship as you right now. So that's why we can wave. So when you see this, what are your, Rick, what was your quarter? And Jasper, what's your quarter? Mutation for Jasper. Do you remember yours, Rick? So you just can see that even within that realm of, I honestly don't remember. I'd have to look. So for Rick, it was, I think it was civilization for Rick. Yeah, I think it's civilization. So when you see that, they're on the opposite side of the mandala wheel. So they are very different right angle crosses of the Maya. Very different. They're serving a very different place within the evolutionary movement of form. And yet they're both very, important roles. And you have different roles and characteristics within them. But there's a deep resonance in terms of, the qualities that come through the themes at a general gate level. So our very last one, folks, is the one that's so different than all the other right angles. And that's the 4-6, because the 4-6, it's like, well, are you right angle or are you left angle? Well, you're right angle. They're a special case, though. They're a kind of an integrating field between, again, they're not a 4-1, but they're in that movement, the final closing of a right angle before you get into the juxtaposition. So the 4 itself is starting the integration between between a right angle and a left angle. And obviously that makes sense. They are the infectious influence. The 4th line is very deeply penetrating, the ability for other people to be pulled into, their influential realm or sphere. And again, they end that 3-6 kind of mutative creative journey and movement. We really ultimately have now determined what works or doesn't work. And so now from that mutation of what works and doesn't work, the transition out of that much, much more self-absorbed area towards the externalizing influence, the application in the end of all of this with whatever cross you're in. Now we start to, very much move into a solid foundational ground of the upper trigram. This is the only cross, you can look at all the cross numbers, the only cross that's absolutely purely transpersonal. That means both lines are in the upper trigram. It's not true for the 4-1, even though they're a juxtaposition. It's not true for a left angle. They have, one they're either both in the lower trigram or they're one's in the lower and one's in the upper, but this one has both in the upper. The only cross that's like that. It gives an illusion that they are so transpersonal that they're not right angle. I've always kind of resonated to the term Ra used for a 4-6, the grand or great voyeurs. They're truly in a transpersonal realm where you're living a personal life. You're in this personalization of a life, but with this feeling that you're somewhat transcended that too, that you are, I've always used the term fly on the wall. You're there and you're also within it. You're watching it and seeing it, but as you do, you're also experiencing it as if it's, vicariously. So this opportunist is the go-between, very, very much able to influence within the foundation of their friends and family. And therefore, again, because the opportunities must come from the network, that's important to them to have friends, but also have that balance with being able to aspire to not having to be with them all the time. I just met someone in this new place I'm living. She's a 2-4, and she is just tickled pink that we've met, and we have this very quick resonance with friendship, even though we're just, what brought us together is very similar. We're both new to the area, and yet there isn't this desire to invade each other's space. She's very much a hermit, and I, had an opportunity to see her last night at a farmer's market, and she invited me to come over and visit anytime. And because she's really recognizing the value of the friendship and the opportunities that'll come with that, her 4 is unconsciously doing that, even though her hermit side saying, why did you do that for? And yet I just immediately put her at rest by saying, well, I'd be happy to come visit anytime I'm in the area, but I have a kind of rule that I will never just knock on your door. I will always call first. Even if I'm right around the corner with my phone, I'll call first. And the look on her face was pure relaxation. It's like, oh yes, thank you. I don't know why my body invited you to come over anytime. I don't mean that. But I knew that. I knew that because I also resonate with that. So we have the ability, again, when you think about a 4-6, and any kind of 4, and now we've got a 4 at a conscious level, that's where the opportunities lie. They need to be guided by their network, by the right friends. Who you hang out with is very important. My parents were so careful. I never knew how careful, but I couldn't talk about a new friend at school without them immediately making sure that they met them. And they were very, clever in their projectorness to guide me into the right influences and away from the wrong influences, who they'll let me play with, who they won't let me play with. They always got to know the parents of the kids I played with so they could also understand where they were coming from. And so they very much really instilled me with my values, which was a part of my deep, important part of my own cross. They instilled very deep values that are good values, actually, by most standards. And so those kinds of things made me, when I was no longer with them, made me still have the type of judgment based on the values they instilled, and I was very deeply influenced by. And I could have, at one stage in my rebellion in my life, I could have gone in a different direction. I could have gone in a very corrupted direction, one that would have led me in a very different life, but started getting in with a little bit of the bad kids that did things a little differently. And yet, in the end, just didn't feel right. So that, really kind of led me to a completely different path. Roz said that depending on who you're around, that will influence all of your opportunities in life. those that go to jail have a very different opportunity in life than those that don't. Those that get educations in times when education is of value has a very different opportunity in life. These things are what you gain access to in terms of your own influence, your network. So externalizing as a fourth line: fixed, friendly, companion, fragile, alone in a crowd. There's impact. The voyeur, always looking in. Sort of not the senior in high school, but the freshman in high school. You're still working on a personal destiny, but you know there's others out there. That social comes naturally. And aura to aura impact is important. You know, there's no fourth line in a left angle ever, but it is a completely transpersonal profile. Their family gives them that foundation of their early upbringing, and it gets externalized in a much broader level, you know, as again, they go through their three-part life. I look at anyone with a sixth line, and especially if you look at the sixth line at the body side, and we kind of are sort of the baby faces. You know, that's, I even won an award as a baby face when I was at Oracle Corporation a long time ago, because we look so much younger than we are. I always was mistaken by my age by about 10 years. And so I'm wondering if that has been true for you, Pam, and Samana and Yi. Has anyone kind of always thought that you looked younger than your true age, your biological age? Yeah, it was definitely true for me. And I kind of didn't like it at certain times when I wanted to be more mature and look mature. But, you know, I have to be honest, it doesn't hurt now, now that I'm at an age where I appreciate that. So yeah, Rick says the 3-6 is, oh yeah, that would be very true. That would be very true. And it's very hard for a really young sixth line who's, you know, maybe not even at their Saturn return, their 30-year, you know, placement yet, to be told you're a late bloomer. You know, it's like, God, when am I going to get the benefits and opportunities out of my life? Well, you're a late bloomer. You're going to have to wait years. You're going to have to wait till you're 50. They don't want to hear it, because you're still actively engaged in living a life that is a part of the developmental cycle. It's not that you're waiting for that ultimate carrot at the end of life and that everything else is all messed up. It's that it's just different. It's different. So though, for those of you that reach your Chiron, it's like you get comfortable in your own skin. And that's really the essence of it. You also take on the ultimate expression of what you're here to be authentically. It's so important to be true to yourself and to walk your talk. It has such an influence on your body. And this is at the body level. When I came down off the roof, nobody could understand why I had 2015 vision and I was in my 50s, because it, you know, it was so unusual. You know, eye doctors could not understand why. And then I started coming down off the roof, and it was like my eyesight changed dramatically. I had not been living my life correctly up until that time. I was just learning about human design at that time. I was able to stop the degradation of my eyesight. I have to wear glasses all the time now, but I stopped the degradation that was happening rapidly when I was coming down off the roof. There's no protection anymore when you come down off the roof. There is none. You're not in your little cocoon. You don't have your little safety net. Life says, okay, We nourished you for 2 cycles. Now you're the bird, now you're the butterfly, you got to fly. You got to go be what you're here that we nurtured. And that's something to really recognize. It is something that you have to come to grips with. There is no turning back. There is only authenticity at this point. There is a vulnerability that the 6th line comes, but it can be a very wise and trusted frequency. It's there to look ahead. It's there to be in touch. And it's there to be the observer, to be observed. And that first 30 years, that trial and error, that is the subjectivity of life. And then you get the flip side. You get the roof, which is the objectivity. There's the duality. But then what happens is the 6th line has now a transcendence of those two. That's not true for other lines. They have this and they have that. Their life and their very pivotal moment in the before and after in their life, their subjectivity and objectivity is more at 40, like all of us with midlife crisis. You know, it's the changing of the nodal configuration. That's the different perspectives of life 1 through 5. The 6 is there to be the ultimate expression of all of it. And so just like you see with life force, when you look at one gate plus another gate equals a channel, which is a transcendence of both of those. It's not one or the other. It's a transcendence, something different that comes from both. That's the same thing with the role model. It's now taking every aspect of that journey from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to be the expression of the ultimate 6. It's a transcendence. It's the ultimate authenticity, the final potential. And so that's really what your life is about. You're not the first 30 years. You're not the second 20 years. You are what those two brought together has created that you now live out. And it's something to witness for sure. So that's it for today. I don't think I have any more slides. But I would love for you guys to, again, go back and I will show you in our next and final class how you can take just some of the words, because I've been really, really calling out the different kind of application of different words. I'm just doing what we did in ABC. I'm taking the keynotes and I gave you little descriptions, little paragraphs that are really playing with the keynotes. And you can do that and do it with your positive characteristics and your negative characteristics. Really get real. You're not just one or the other, you're both. And so play and see. That's another one of your formulas. All those things that can be on the other side is the shadow side is your formula. Own it, live it, be it. It's you. And recognize it. And recognize that it doesn't bring a detriment when it's correct, when you are following your strategy and authority. There is a time, you know, as a 4, to be mean when there is a reason that you have, you know, had someone betray your trust or betray your confidence. They're no longer your friend. You don't have to be friendly to someone who has really betrayed you. It's a part of the formula. It's part of the natural state of expression. But yes, here we have the voyeur absorbing their own process as they find the right moment and opportunity to externalize and make friends. So have fun just playing with that. And I'll show you some, you know, again, just examples of keynotes. But we'll also take a look at the juxtaposition, the left angles, and then we'll just kind of go back down memory lane and remember all the things we've been doing for the past 3 months together. So I'll see you guys in another couple days. Take care, rest up, and yeah, love yourself. See you soon.